James Caan, the son of Pakistan immigrants to the UK, left school at 16 because of a burning desire to run his own business. He's a British entrepreneur, best known as the kindest of the five venture capitalists in the BBC hit show Dragon's Den. Caan leverages his high profile to help the UK government create small companies all over Britain. He used a £100 million grant to create 15,000 of these businesses in the last 2 years. We caught up with him on Saturday when he jetted into Johannesburg to address 4,000 people at a Millionaire to Billionaire seminar. We're with James Caan here at the Sandton Convention Centre. James, you've got a thing about names. Just first of all, your own name. When you Google James Caan, you get yourself and, of course, a famous actor.
I was so disappointed when he copied my name.
Was it spelt exactly the same?
Yes,
way
absolutely the same, yes.
From the beginning. And then Alexander Mann, your first company. Where did that name come from?
You know, Alec, whenever I've started a business, and as you know, I've started many businesses, I think branding is really quite important. And when I was setting up Alexander Mann, I had this vision in my head that the business that I was going to create was going to be a global business. It was going to be an international brand. So right from day one, I wanted it to feel big. I wanted it to sound big. I wanted it to have substance, credibility, professionalism. So I think the name is very much about the brand that you most associate yourself with, or the image that you would like to create for your business.
Where did you get the name from then?
You know, it's like when you name a child. I remember starting my own business. I was sitting in the kitchen with my notepad and sitting there and gazing into the ceiling thinking, you know, if my business was a person, what personality would he have? What would he look like? What would he sound like? And all the kind of characteristics that I wrote down, the name Alexander for me accentuated that image. And then because Alexander was such a long name, I knew I needed a much smaller, shorter name to follow. And then I came up with the name Mann because in executive headhunting, we were specializing in the financial services market. And in my head, I thought most of the people we would place typically would be men. And therefore, Alexander Mann had that kind of ring around it. And then I knew that most long names get abbreviated. And then I sort of came up with the abbreviations AMA, Alexander Mann Associates. So it was very much around the concept of branding.
Which is important for entrepreneurs, and perhaps often
Absolutely.
We don't spend as much time as we should. But you're here to talk about entrepreneurship. That's your speciality. That's what everybody knows.
It's my passion.
Yeah. And when did it start? Because reading your book, you left home at 16, left school at 16. When Warren Buffett had, I think, 3 businesses before he'd got into his teens. Were you similar?
I essentially knew at the age of 12 I wanted to be doing something for myself. My father was an entrepreneur, and I could sense from a very early age the hustle and bustle of business and doing deals and trading, you know, was something that really excited me. So I knew the reason why I left school at 16, because I knew that academia wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. I wanted the opportunity to be in control of my own destiny and to be my own boss.
That is interesting. Here in South Africa, we have what they call the University of Newtown, the old traders who had a part of Johannesburg that they learnt their business from. Not at the University of the Witwatersrand. Do you think that academia makes a better or lesser entrepreneur?
I think it makes a better entrepreneur because at the age of 42, when I sold my business for just over R1 billion, I looked back on my life and said, if I could do anything different, what would I do differently? And the only thing that was missing in my life is lack of education. So actually, at the age of 42, I went to Harvard Business School to do a business degree there because I still believed it was important, because I think it's better to have it than not to have it. You know, I have 2 daughters now, and I've encouraged both my children to go to university, because the one thing we both know is the one thing that is guaranteed in business is there are no guarantees, because you have no idea whether the business will succeed or not. And God forbid, if it doesn't work out, you need something to fall back on. And a good education, I couldn't think of anything better to have as a platform.
But if it doesn't work out, you should be trying again.
You can try again, but I think that platform of knowledge. So when I went to Harvard Business School, a lot of people looked at me, they couldn't believe, why does this guy that's just built this amazing business, he's very successful, you know, he's learned the hard way how to become successful. What is a degree going to make a difference to him? But you know what? I came back, I felt better, I felt more learned, I understood that business and times change. You know, the things that we do today in business are very different to what we did 20 years ago. The impact of technology, globalization, the internet, some of these things that the early entrepreneurs are probably falling behind on. So actually, I believe that if you want to stay with the times, if you want to be able to do business in the modern world, then actually I think a good education gives you a bit of an edge. I don't think you necessarily have to do it the hard way. You can be smarter.
Lifelong learning.
Clearly.
What are your daughters, what did you encourage them to study?
My elder daughter did political science and my younger daughter did economics with maths.
So that's not entrepreneurship?
No, I think I wanted them to live their dream, because when I was growing up, one of the things that I did is I didn't want to join my father's business, who was an entrepreneur. And I was very clear in my mind that what I didn't want to do is give my children a pressure to be living my dream and doing what I did. I wanted them to chase their dream and follow their passion. And both, you know, in Hannah's case, economics was her passion. That's what she was really motivated by. And Gemma was very interested in political sciences. And then she did a year out in Paris. And she wanted that little bit of experience internationally. So I think what's really important for me was to give them the chance to do what they thought was right for them.
It's all about passion.
I think their passion was, when they were growing up, Gemma wanted to travel, she wanted to do events, she wanted to have a good time. You know, her motivation was not about money or business. She wanted to live and grow and experience. Hannah was really focused and thought, I want to get into private equity, I want to work with my dad, I want to build a business like him. So both my children were very different, but my clear lesson from that is actually to let your children flourish in what they believe is right for them.
It's not just children, but on a broader perspective, your first business is all about knowing people.
Correct.
What you're doing with the British government, and we'll talk about that in detail in a moment, is also finding people, finding entrepreneurs. What you did on Dragon's Den was all about assessing people. Is that what gets you up in the morning? Do you like people?
That is absolutely what gets me up in the morning. People amaze me, they intrigue me, they inspire me, they motivate me. I think what I've learned in the last 30 years in business is a business idea does not succeed by itself. I don't think a product succeeds by itself. Everything needs people to make it happen. And if you happen to focus on that ingredient, I think you're halfway there to understanding the dynamics of business. To me, people make the world go round. People build and fail in businesses. So I've spent my entire career focusing on the importance and value of people in business.
But sometimes the people don't know their own passions. How do you help them, or can you help them unlock that?
I think you have to give them the ability to grow. You have to, it's like a flower, they've got to be able to blossom for themselves. I don't think you can force somebody to be passionate about something. I think giving people opportunities, giving people flexibility, giving people freedom allows them to flourish into what they ultimately become successful at.
So in that way, they will find their passion one way or the other.
They always do. They always. I think they don't find their passion if they're following a very narrow path, if they're very restricted in one avenue, because they don't know what they don't know. What I've tried to do with the businesses that I've been involved with is to let people experiment, let people try things. The one thing that I'm very well known for, today in my private equity portfolio, I own 42 businesses. And one of the key messages that I consistently deliver to my chief executives is to encourage them to make more mistakes. And people look at me, they think I'm mad. And I say, but actually, you know what? Because you don't make enough mistakes, tells me you're not learning, you're not taking risks, you're never going to flourish because you're too paranoid by getting it wrong. The problem is, I believe as entrepreneurs, we take success for granted because we think we work hard. So we don't really learn much, but we learn a lot when we get things wrong. So actually in business, it's not a bad thing to make mistakes.
But James, the Anglo-Saxon culture is in many ways anti-entrepreneurship, because when you make a mistake, you get written off, you get the wrong signals that get sent to you from everybody around you. Is this something that you're trying to combat in the way that you're talking to your chief executive?
Absolutely, because it doesn't make it right. History or culture doesn't make it right. The world has changed. And one of the things that I quite like about America is in Silicon Valley today, when you go and raise capital, when they're looking and they're assessing you, if you haven't failed before, you're not very appealing to them. They mark somebody greater who has failed before, because they recognise that he is actually much stronger, and therefore the chances of him knowing how to combat failure, he has experience. So if you've never failed, actually you're not that attractive as an investment. So to me, that's why I'm so passionate about, sharing that focus about the importance of recognising that the journey of success includes failing.
Did you have that as one of your tick boxes when you were sitting in Dragon's Den?
When I looked at people, and if I saw somebody who was inexperienced and was not a risk taker, I would never invest in them anyway. If I saw somebody that actually looked like they were very much trying to look for a safe option, looking for the safety net, that's not entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship is about embracing risk, understanding that to make something out of nothing, you have to sacrifice and you have to risk. If you're not prepared to do that, really, you're the perfect person that we should be employing.
In the 4 years that you were on the television program, how many investments did you make?
14 investments.
And how did they go?
I think typical venture capital statistics, a third of them I'm probably going to lose my entire capital, a third of them I'll probably get my money back, and of the last third I'll probably make money, and probably one of them, which actually has happened in reality, has done incredibly well.
Which one was that?
It was a business called Chalkbox.
And how did you, looking back on it, how did the decision to invest in that one differ to the ones that you're going to lose your money on?
When you watch the video clip on Chalkbox, you'll see this was an entrepreneur who'd got his business up and running, had £250,000 in the bank, was generating 1 million orders a year for the product that he was selling, and his biggest challenge was he couldn't scale the business. He couldn't expand and grow the business. Despite it was doing well, it was making money, but it was still a bit boutiquey. And his challenge of coming onto the show was not just looking for capital, he was also looking for a mentor. He needed somebody to show him how to break that glass ceiling that he just couldn't get beyond. And for me, he demonstrated that the business was live, it was working, people wanted to buy the product. So actually it felt to me like a tried and tested opportunity.
So if would-be dragons who are looking at other businesses, other entrepreneurs, what they could take out of that presumably is don't always go in right at the ground floor, at the basement. Wait a little while.
I mean, that's certainly, on that particular investment, that was the key driver for me. But also I could see that this individual could run a business. He could manage customers. He could manage finances. He could actually get the business up and running. And actually, to get it to where he'd got it was quite an achievement. But actually, where it could have gone was a whole different journey. And that was the journey that I wanted to share with him.
Welcome back to our special edition with James Caan, who's here in South Africa over the weekend. James, you have also been involved, clearly we know you from the Dragon's Den on BBC, but you've been involved lately with the British government. They gave you a checkbook, a rather large checkbook, to help them promote entrepreneurship.
Yes, it was an amazing opportunity for me as an entrepreneur, somebody who's built his own business, to be given that opportunity to travel around the country, to meet thousands of other entrepreneurs, to give them an opportunity to start their business using the government's capital to do that. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, for me, it's probably been the most, exciting thing I've ever done. When I embarked on this campaign, in my mind, my target was, I was very focused around starting 1,000 new businesses for the UK economy.
And how much capital were you given?
£100 million. And the idea was that if I could start 1,000 businesses, then essentially I was creating 1,000 jobs, because every entrepreneur who starts a business creates a job, and then through that entrepreneur, hopefully you hire other people. So the thing that was really driving me was the opportunity of job creation. And Alec, I'm really delighted to say that March the 31st was the end of my second year, and with a target of to start 1,000 businesses, we finished year 2 with 15,200 businesses successfully launched, and having created literally thousands of jobs up and down the country. So without a question of doubt, it's really amazing that as chairman of Startup Loans, I don't get paid, I don't receive a fee or salary, etc. And yet when I look back on my life, it's the thing that I've probably enjoyed the most, the opportunity of doing something for the country, giving something back. And knowing today, there are thousands of people around the UK today running businesses that I was instrumental in identifying and facilitating. And each of those businesses that I've started, I've ensured that each of those entrepreneurs has a mentor that we provide. So it's not just capital that's important, but giving him a local mentor to help him flourish in his business.
It's an enormous number of companies that you've helped start there. How did you select?
What I've done is I've got distribution partners around the country. So from day one, to me, this was a business challenge. I was actually starting a business. So Startup Loans in itself is a startup business. We have an idea, we have a concept, we need to make it work. And right from day one, I knew that scale was going to be my biggest challenge. I didn't want to start 5 or 10 businesses. Literally, I'm starting today 30 businesses every single day. So that's about volume and scale. For that, you need distribution. So I have literally distribution partners all over the country. So whether it's Manchester or Birmingham or Liverpool. So I have organizations on the ground who are equipped to be able to assess somebody, to evaluate a business plan, to find a mentor, to help facilitate the funding of that business. So I have 42 different partners all around the country. We have about 160 people spread throughout the UK who are there assessing these individuals. I have a website called startuploans.co.uk. We attract over 1,000 applications every week. I use my name, my brand, my connections to drive traffic through to the website. I then have a team of 40 people in London who then manage and coordinate the activities, throughout the organisations. It's a very sophisticated organisation today, but only 2 years ago, it was just an idea.
Well, a wonderful lesson for South Africa. We are in the process now of taking small businesses seriously as a national priority, and we're in the process also of creating a ministry of small and medium enterprises. Perhaps they could consult you, or perhaps you could give us some ideas on the way you would structure it.
I mean, I would be delighted to do that, because building a national organisation, building a national distribution, understanding who to back, when to back, how much capital to give them, whether you give the capital all up front or you put milestones together, how you track it, how you monitor it, but also linking it to a mentor. And mentors are not people necessarily who are chairman of public companies. I'm looking for mentors in the UK that are running small businesses similar to the entrepreneur who's looking to do. I need local people who are prepared to give up 1 or 2 days a month, a bit of their time, to give somebody else an opportunity. And actually today, I think we've got just over 4,000 mentors registered across the UK that are available to support some of our businesses. Some of my mentors mentor 2 or 3 different businesses. Some of the mentors do it via email, some of them do it by Skype. Technology really has transformed the way we do business today.
And your brand as well has been leveraged very aggressively into this field, into a very good field, into entrepreneurship. How did you get onto Dragon's Den in the first place?
Through my private equity firm, I built a very good reputation, something I'm really proud of, where I've invested in people. So I've become quite well known in the UK that I'm not an entrepreneur that invests necessarily in a product, so I'm not a sector specialist. So I'm not a retail guy or a technology guy, I'm a people guy. So I invest in people, and some of the people that I've invested in have literally gone on and built multi-billion-dollar businesses. And one in particular, an entrepreneur that I invested in, went on to become Businesswoman of the Year. The business we sold for nearly 4 billion rand, and it was a startup. So I've got a bit of a reputation of picking winners and picking people who really flourish under my mentorship of the businesses that I facilitate. The BBC were looking for somebody in Dragon's Den who had that edge of understanding people and investing in people, because so many of the opportunities, people come on the show saying, it's not just about the money, but I'm looking for somebody to help me. And I kind of fitted that profile. So I got approached and they said, would you be interested? And the idea of giving something back to give other people an opportunity, for me, was very inspirational. But also I thought sometimes on the show, we can be a bit too aggressive, because I think whilst the show is entertainment, people enjoy the kind of banter, but I also think we have a responsibility, because so many of our young people watch that show, and actually discouraging people and sometimes being overly aggressive, I just didn't like. And I thought maybe somebody on the show should have a bit more balance, because we need to still motivate these people and inspire them, because when people don't make it, I want them to have the courage to come back and have another go.
But only 14 investments in 4 years. You were fairly selective.
I think, you also remember you're there on stage, you're being watched by 6 million people, and actually you've got to be smart. It's not just because you're wealthy, you want to throw money around. You're there demonstrating what are the characteristics of a good business you should be investing in. And I want people to learn from that. They say, I like the way James made that decision. I can see why he invested in that business rather than the other business. So yes, of course, I could have invested in many, many different businesses, but I'm there as an investor and I'm there to demonstrate how to make a return from the money that you invest.
You're learning as you're watching. By the way, a lot more than 6 million people. It's very popular in South Africa as well. A couple of things about businesses. They tend, sometimes anyway, not to go in a nice, even uptick, but rather to be as though you were climbing steps in a house. And during this period of extreme growth is often the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs. Now, you've grown a couple of businesses of your own and many other people's businesses. How do you address those challenges?
I think firstly, by knowing and understanding that the one thing that is guaranteed in business, if anything can go wrong, it absolutely will go wrong. So firstly, don't be surprised when it's not just one step at a time. Sometimes you climb 4 at one time, but you drop 15. It happens. The markets change, your customers change, economies can change, price competition comes in. So much happens in business that you have to be prepared for. To scale a business, to me, is about people. It's about resources. Recognizing that as an entrepreneur, you cannot be the best at everything. And the one biggest lesson that I've learned in business is that 100% of nothing is still nothing. So when I look at businesses, and I'm constantly saying to people, business is about attracting the best talent. And they say to me, but James, it's okay for you because you can afford it. Well, actually, that's not true, because in the beginning, I was the same as them. I didn't have any capital, but what I did have was equity. And I recognized that it was worth sharing some of that equity to find the talent that compensated for my weaknesses. So if I'm looking to scale a business, I need somebody who's done it before. I need somebody who's best in class. How do I attract that person if I don't have the capital? Actually, what I can do is share in the capital of the equity of the company, because actually if he buys into my dream and we can do it together, we're both going to win.
Typically, how would you do that? Let's just say you've started a business, you own it all, you got 100%, and you need an accountant and you need a marketing person.
So let's say I find the marketing person and he wants to earn X amount a year, but I can't justify that kind of cost. But this person buys into me. He can see what I'm saying. He can see my vision. He can see this business is going to be very successful. And maybe I may start him off with a 5% stake in the business and say, well, rather than paying you X, I can pay you less than that, but I can make that up with some equity, because if you believe in what we're doing, the equity will be worth a lot more than the income that you're sacrificing. And maybe the accountant comes along, I give him 5%. Maybe I bring somebody on, who's head of sales, and I give him a piece. And even if I own with 50% of the business, 50% of a business making a lot of money is worth a lot more than 100% of nothing.
50%?
I would give away 50. I don't think it's about control. I think a lot of people overplay this issue with control. Ultimately, control is about leadership. It's not economics, because each of them own maybe 5% each. To me, if you're the founder, if you're a good leader, if you have integrity and honesty in the way you run a business, I don't own 100% of every business. I'm absolutely not afraid of diluting down to 30%, 40%. To me, it's not the number, it's what it's worth. Never lose sight of the value, because the number in itself has no value. Because 100% of nothing is still nothing.
Indeed, and as you were saying earlier, that's what your father taught you back in those days. Is the ultimate objective for the businesses that you start to be listed on the stock market?
Not always. I think there are certain businesses that fit very well in a public environment, in a stock market type of environment, but I don't necessarily believe all of them do. I've generally gone down the private equity route. So I get a business, in fact, I've got a business right now that we have an offer for. We've got two options. We can either list it, and we have the stock market doing extremely well in London right now. It's a prime candidate for listing, but actually I'm probably going to choose a private equity option, and essentially not sell 100%, sell 60% of the business, still retain 40% of that business, and actually still have a vested interest in the business going forward, because actually I think the private equity firm will bring even more capital, more expertise, and actually continue to build it. The business that I sold, Alexander Mann, I sold to a private equity firm. It was sold for just over R1 billion. They held it for 3.5 years, sold it for R2 billion. The next guy has just sold the business 2 months ago for R5 billion. So actually you can see, so when I look back, people say to me, you must feel really upset you sold it too cheap. Actually, I don't, because when I sold it, it was the right decision at that time. The fact that businesses continue to grow and build, and today it's the world's most successful human resources business on the planet, which gives me a lot of pride that that business I started from literally a broom cupboard with no money, and today, has a market capitalization of over R5 billion. So actually for me, to see businesses continue to succeed even after you, I think is something to be proud of.
Just to close off with, we've spoken a lot about entrepreneurship, but we haven't spoken about money. Now, clearly you've made a lot of money in your life. Is that the scoreboard that entrepreneurs should be measuring themselves against?
I think in the beginning, there's no question when you start out, you're hungry, you're driven, you're motivated, and you need to have that recognition of success, be it the nice house, the nice car, the nice holidays, and there is nothing wrong in that, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. We should celebrate success and enjoy success. But I think what happens is over a time period, you realize that once you have those trappings, once you have those toys, they in themselves don't become enough. Then I think what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's what you can do for other people. It's what you can do for the country. It's what you can do for other organizations. How can you share that knowledge, that expertise? And today, that is my scoreboard. It's not what I'm doing for myself, but what I can make a difference for other people.
James Caan, it's been a privilege. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in South Africa.
Thank you very much indeed.